Okay, we are now looking at the assignment number 2, but we're now looking at question number 5. Now, if you haven't watched the video on question number 4, these two questions are very, very similar. So we're going to be relying on what we learned from the question number 4 video to finish this one. So if you're having trouble and you couldn't get number 4, watch that video first, okay? All right, here's number 5. It's an elevator. It's got a mass of 1,700 kilograms, just like before. But the other part of the mass, remember, is the people. And in the last question, we had 10 people that were 50 kilograms each. But in this question, we don't know what this other mass is going to be, right? We could call this mass of elevator. Maybe put a little E there. And mass of people. We don't know what the mass of the people is going to be because we don't know how many there are. We know they're 50 kilograms each, right? But times how many? Well, what we do in math is we use a little n, which will stand for the number of people. So you'll notice that our mass is now an expression with a letter in it. But as physicists, we don't care about letters. We treat them just like numbers. So 50n is the mass of the people. So what's the mass of the whole thing? Well, it would be the elevator 1,700 plus 50n. So this is the mass of the total. It looks a little bit messy, but that's all we have to do. And that's the only difference in this question. Now we can use that for m whenever we come to it. So we go back to our picture, and we have our free body diagram. We have the cable, right? 25,000 newtons was the force of the cable. That doesn't change. And we have the force of gravity. And again, in an elevator, there are no normal forces. You have to have a surface. You have to have a floor or a desk or a tabletop or something, right, that you're pushing down on by gravity to push up for a normal force, so there isn't one. We write our net force equation. In this case, it'll be the y, the up and down. Force of the cable plus the force of gravity. You notice how we're doing it exactly the same way because we already said that this equation right here that I've just drawn describes everything. It describes the situation no matter how many people are on board. So, MA equals 25,000, and then we have MG. The only difference here is our M is a little bit complicated. It's 1,700 plus 50N. So when we write in here our masses, we have to write 1,700 plus 50N times A. Now in this question, it tells us the A. It tells us it wants the elevator to accelerate upwards at 0.2 meters per second. So we'll put a plus 0.2 in there for upwards at 0.2 meters per second squared. This is still 25,000. Plus, now be careful here. When we put the numbers in for the force of gravity, we have to remember it's a downward force. So we're looking at our picture to see that downward force. Change it to a minus for down. The mass, 1,700 plus 50n, and we're going to multiply that by 9.8. Now there's only one letter in this whole thing, and that's n, which is the number of people. It's going to pop out, isn't it? So we just have to do the math. Now the math's a little bit trickier because you have some brackets. You got to distribute. So the first case is 1,700 times 0.2, which would be 340. And then if you do 50 times 0.2, you'll get about, well, it should be 10, right? So plus 10 n. 25,000 is not changing. Now we have to do 9.8 times 1,700 into the brackets. 16,660. And also, don't forget when we do the next part, the 50 times the 9.8, which is going to give us 490n, we also have this minus here, which multiplies in, right, to change that plus to a minus. So don't forget about that little minus out front. When you multiply that in, actually I drew my arrow funny, it multiplies into there, doesn't it? It changes that to a minus. Okay, so now the rules of math say we need to group the like terms. So we're going to leave the 10n on this side, and we're going to move the 490n over to go with it. making it a plus on that side. And then we have 25,000 minus 16,660. And then the 340 from the other side will also sneak over here, and we'll have to just figure all that out. Right? So 25,000. And then we're going to subtract 1660. Let me just do this, and I won't do it in my head because I don't want to make a mistake. 16,660, and then minus 340, leaving us with 8,000 on that side of the equation. And on the other side, we have 500n. So now all we have to do is divide 8,000 by 500, right? Dividing both sides by 500, and we get n equals 16 people. Okay, let me take that other equals out of there, right? There. N equals 16 people. And that's how we solve this one. But notice how it's exactly the same. We had a funny looking mass. That was really the only problem that we had to figure out right at the start. But the rest of it works the same way. So that's how you do